Morning, brethren. Welcome again to our daily devotionals. We're going to be thinking about Paul's words that we find in verse 3 in relation to prayer, where he says, "In all my prayers for all of you, I always pray with joy." Paul is going to explain to them what he prays later on. Here in verse 3, he wants them to know that he prays for them, and he does so with joy. The Apostle Paul, of course, had been very much involved in the foundation of the church at Philippi. He had been the instrument under God that was used to bring about a group of believers in this city meeting together in order to worship the Lord. And Paul always had these people in his heart, and he wants them to know that he prays for them, and he prays for them regularly, and he prays for all of them. It's interesting, he says, "In all my prayers for all of you, I always pray with joy." It wasn't that Paul confined his prayers to just some of the people in Philippi. It wasn't that he prayed just for the elders and the deacons, for example, who he mentions in the opening verse. No, he is praying for all of the members. Paul can think of them in his mind. He can go through them. He realizes who such and such a person is, knows to a good extent what their situation is, what their needs are, and he prays for them. And when he does pray, it's his joy to pray for them, because he knows that here in this church, these people are going on with the Lord. These people are growing in their faith. And he makes requests with joy. The word requests points to definite petitions for specific needs. In other words, whenever Paul prayed for the Philippians, he didn't pray in vague, general, all-embracing terminology. He didn't pray, "Dear God, bless all the members of the church at Philippi, Amen." He brought individual people to the Lord. He brought their circumstances to the Lord. He prayed sensibly, and he prayed knowingly about their situation. This is a man who knew what it was to pray for others. And in that respect, Paul is a wonderful example to us. Like Paul, we ought to be able to say, "I pray for all of you." Certainly as a minister, I ought to be able to say that, and every minister ought to be able to say it of his congregation. If a minister isn't praying for the individual members of his congregation on a regular basis, he is failing in one of his most important duties. And he should be praying for them individually, thinking of their family circumstances, thinking of their health, thinking of their job, thinking of where they are in their life, whether they're studying in education, whether they're looking for employment, out of employment, whether they're going through a serious illness, whatever it happens to be. And he ought to be praying individually, and he ought to be praying personally, and he ought to be praying specifically for the members of his church. That's a responsibility that is not only to be carried by the minister, it is a responsibility that should be carried also by the elders of the church. The elders are to be pastors. They are to shepherd the flock of God, and one of the ways in which they shepherd the flock of God is by praying for their members. Are you an elder of your congregation? How often do you pray for each family and each individual within those families in your congregation? Be honest. How often do you do it? It's something that we should be doing regularly. "In all my prayers for all of you." And it's not something that is to be confined to the minister and to the elders. This is something that we should be doing one for another. People in churches, generally speaking, know all the members, especially if your church is, as like many of our churches, small. There's nothing to stop us taking one individual or one family each day of the week and working through the month praying for those individuals and those families. We should be asking people, is there anything that I could be praying for you? We should be thinking about where they are with respect to the circumstances in their life. The Apostle Paul made specific requests for the individuals in Philippi. Brethren, let us be practical and specific and diligent in our praying for one another. Next time we read these words, in all my prayers for all of you, I always pray with joy. Let's take to heart one of the lessons from it, that we are to be men and women of prayer, praying for each other in our congregations. And let's not just take it to heart, let's do it. May God help us to apply these words to our own prayer life on behalf of others. Have a good day. God bless.